No, I love this conversation because recently we were shown some data that actually the kind of industry of contentment, like trying to cause arguments, is like potentially a $3 trillion or more industry. That politics, social media, etc., make money off of there being, conflict.
Yeah. Similar to what I said before, if the world was able to kind of see people as people instead of the color of their skin, the religion that they are, the gender that they are, and just see them as a human being, I mean, the world would be completely different.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Phoenix Generation podcast. Today, we're starting a little sub-series of our Phoenix Generation podcast called Faces of Faith. One of the main ways that there's beautiful diversity in our Central Florida community and the rest of the world is through faith. And it's one of those things I think that sometimes we're told like not to ask about, not to talk about. So here at the Phoenix Generation, we're going to say no to that. And we are going to talk about it and lean in. 2026 is really interesting in the spring. There's an alignment of a lot of faith fasting traditions and spring traditions in a way that there has not been in the past. Everything from Lunar New Year to Lent to Ramadan to celebrations like Purim and Holi, the Bahai Fast is all actually happening at the same time. And that rarely lines up like that because different faiths use different calendars, lunar calendars, solar calendars, Gregorian calendars. So I think it's really awesome. What's been giving me a lot of energy this month is thinking about the fact that although there are many, many challenges in our world and lots of hard things happening, there are literally billions of people focusing spiritually in some way at the same time, which I think we don't even understand the power that that's releasing in our society. So today we are talking about a few big questions. How does faith become something we actually live, not just something we're taught? What happens when young people begin practicing and choosing these traditions for themselves instead of inheriting them from the generations above them? And what might this shared season of reflection and spiritual focus teach us about ourselves and each other? That's a lot to tackle. We're not going to be able to tackle it all, but we're definitely going to get started. So today I'm joined by 3 students of different faith traditions. We're practicing some of these observances, and we're going to talk about these sacred practices and fasting. What does it feel like? What are the challenges? What are things you wish people knew about your faith? So let's jump right in. I'm going to ask you guys to start by telling me your name, your school, your major, and how you describe your faith tradition to other people. So we'll start right here with Maddie.
Yeah, hi, my name's Maddie. I'm a junior at Stetson University. I am a religious studies major, and I have a minor in Spanish and civic and social responsibility. And I'm a Christian. So right now we are practicing, or in the season of Lent, which basically marks the lead up to Easter, which is kind of what we're practicing right now. So usually what happens is Christians either give something up or put something into practice, or both. So for me right now, I'm giving up social media. It's been hard, not fun, but it's also been really good. So for different people, that could look differently. Some people do food. Some people put something into practice, like going for a walk or not watching TV past 9 o'clock. It just really depends on the individual.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Remind me how many days Lent is.
40 days.
40 days.
40 days.
Okay. You got this.
Yes.
How far in are you?
Started 2.5 weeks ago, maybe.
Okay.
So it's about 6 weeks. So
awesome. Great.
We're getting there.
Yeah. My name is Jonah. I am a sophomore at the University of Central Florida. I'm studying digital media with a focus in game design and minoring in technical education. As we're talking about holidays and all of that kind of stuff, we were just recently finished the holiday of Purim, which is a little different than some of the other holidays going on, as it's more of a celebration and a time to go over the story of a princess named Esther who struggled with her own views on if she should share her Judaism to the king, who not necessarily knew all about Judaism and was being told that Judaism was bad, and listening to that story and taking that to ourselves to be able to push out that we are Jewish and to share our faith with other people by having an amazing celebration where we dress up in costumes, have hamantaschen, which are 3-pointed cookies to represent the villain of the story, Haman, who was trying to eradicate all the Jews from the area. And we read the story of Esther, and we scream and boo when Haman, who was the villain's name, is mentioned, and just have a good time and spend time with people who are Jewish as well, and share those amazing stories with other people as well.
And when people ask you about your faith, how do you describe yourself?
Myself, in regards to my faith, I mean, that's a fantastic question. I think that we are strong. Like, a lot of people know that Judaism is a religion, but don't kind of realize how small we are. I mean, we realistically are a very small religion with, I believe, 16 million people in the religion, which is minuscule compared to other religions, but is still probably one of the most well-known religions as well. But we are strong. We're small but mighty as always, and we have that big sense of community since we are so small. And yeah.
Great. Awesome. Umi, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Umi, and I am currently finishing my first year within Rollins College. Currently, I'm a bio major, and my minor is in sexuality, gender, and women's studies. And I grew up in a Muslim household where Islam was a very central part of our practices at home. And it's something I feel over the years, not that I've just inherited, but something that has become embedded into my own life. And at the moment, I feel we're celebrating Ramadan. And at its basics, Ramadan is basically when Muslims wake up for a meal called suhoor, which is a pre-dawn meal before sunrise. And they set an intention to fast. And so they'd fast without food or water the whole day. And towards the end of the day at sunset, we break our fast with water and dates, and we proceed on to iftar, which is the meal to break our fasts after sunset. But we also proceed to having our Maghrib and Isha prayers, which are our evening prayers. And to me, I feel like at its core, Ramadan is not about deprivation. It's more about like intention. And I like to say that it's about it's emptying your stomach, but feeding your soul in a way. And to me, Ramadan is more about it's about reconnecting with God in a world where there's so much like constant consumption and consumerism. And it's just taking that time to step away, reconnecting to God and reflecting in a way. And it's about charity as well, because Ramadan, it reorients us to like humanity, and we're able to like feel hunger and put ourselves in the shoes of people who live with hunger, not by choice.
Thank you so much for sharing. I was raised as a member of the Bahai faith, and similar things to what you're saying around fasting. This idea, I've actually been reading Bahai quotes more about the fast and reminding myself two things you said are very similar. One is that it's not supposed to be about deprivation or punishment. It's not like, oh, I'm, paying for some sin or some, thing I did. It's really about, like you said, turning down the noise on our material self, our physical body, and turning up the noise on our spiritual self and our spiritual connection. And also, there was a quote I read the other day. I don't know if you've ever read a scripture from your writings and you're like, have I ever read this before? And you have, but it hits you like in that moment specifically. Mm-hmm. There was one that said pretty much something like, for those people of means, the fast is an opportunity to connect yourself a little bit with the experience of those who live in woe. Yes. And I thought, man, that is so beautiful. There are so many people who actually have physical hunger on the daily basis, like not for, a practice of fasting, but just out of their lived experience. And that has really sustained me this fast, thinking anytime I have that little bit of hunger, or yesterday I was at Disney fasting with my son, and we smelled the popcorn carts every 50 feet. And it doesn't really bother me that much, because I think what a blessing it is to be able to have to choose if I'm fasting or not just have that be my lived experience. Similarly, we fast from sunrise to sunset for 19 days, abstaining from food and drink. That part is the physical fast. I find the spiritual fast a little more challenging, which is like cleanse your mind, speak patiently, all these really spiritual pieces that can be so hard in our day-to-day life. But it reminds me that this is the time to focus. And Maddie, what you were sharing was really interesting to me. One of the things, there were a bunch of Baha'i youth this weekend, we were talking about our fast, and they were saying, sometimes fasting from one thing or withdrawing ourselves from one thing and focusing on our spirit adjusts other things as well. Mm-hmm. So we're noticing if my physical fast is going to be successful, I have to sleep enough. And it's actually probably best if I reduce my social media, because it's just not aligned with like what I'm trying to achieve at this time. So I thought that was really cool, actually. So awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing about that. And one other thing I think it's really important to tell everyone is like, we all are one person in our religion. We are not representing all of our faith in some way. Most of our faiths have different sects or different ways that people would describe themselves in that faith. So today, we're all kind of speaking from our own personal experience. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Do any of you want to share, like, in the spiritual tradition you're doing now, or just in general, how did you make that transition between what your family practiced as faith and what you choose to practice as faith? Or did you decide that it's exactly how they practice it? And what was that decision process for you?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, not even just in the family sense, but Judaism has changed so much over time in all different sects of Judaism. For a little bit of background, there's kind of three main sects of Judaism: Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform, all kind of having different levels of following the Torah, which is our holy book. And when I was growing up, it was different than what it was now, even regarding how my parents followed Judaism. And especially going to college and kind of realizing that I can make my own decisions as well, kind of change those aspects as well. One specific example is our levels of something called kashrut, which is kosher food. And in the Torah, it gives specific information on what foods we're allowed to eat, what meat we're not allowed to eat, what we're not allowed to eat together, and things like that. And I was raised as a kid to not eat pork, not eat shellfish, and not eat milk and meat as like kind of the overview basics of the kashrut laws. And when I kind of moved away from home, I did a little bit deeper reading into the Torah and kind of found that the laws on milk and meat, to me, are a little bit less strict. In the Torah, it says something along the lines of you cannot cook a baby in its mother's milk. And to me, that doesn't mean I can't put cheese on a cheeseburger. And so along the lines of that, I try to not eat pork. I don't eat shellfish. But the rest of that has kind of changed over time. And with that being said, my parents still obviously fully support the way that I practice Judaism. And I believe that for all religions, I feel like everyone should be able to kind of make their decisions on how they practice the religion, not based off what their parents, but kind of based off their own opinions on how their religion runs, whether that is through their holy book or through the eyes of their holy figure or something like that.
Yeah, and tell me a little bit more. I know there's a full day in Judaism that is usually focused on fasting. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about that day.
Yeah, so that day is called Yom Kippur. It's not around this time period, so that's kind of, I steered away from that. But Yom Kippur is an amazing holiday. In my opinion, it's one of, if not the most important holiday of the year, where we take the day starting from nighttime after a big, very not salty meal so that we can last the next day of non-fasting. I'm sure a lot of you can attest to that. And you start with services. Right in the morning, we are praying from around 9 to 3, and the prayers are shifted. Normally our prayers during the week for Friday night services or for Saturday day services are praising and thanking God and asking for things, for health and for other well-being. And on Yom Kippur, it all shifts. It shifts to asking for forgiveness, not just for things that you've done personally, but things that everyone has done. Because as a whole, whether if some religions believe in God and some do not, we are God's people in Judaism, that all of the people, regardless of if you're Jewish or not, people are of God. They were created by God, and by asking for forgiveness, not just for yourself, but for everyone, brings a whole nother level of that prayer. And by fasting, it, like you guys said, it releases the mind of that food distraction of having to eat food, and you can focus fully on that prayer. We pray until 3, we go home. Normally it's nap time when you go home so that you don't have to think about food. And then we go back and we pray. And then that whole prayer is those last minute forgivenesses, is anything that we've missed. And then after that, we have similar break fast as other religions, and nice big meal with bagels, lox, fish, fruit, all that good stuff. And yeah, and that's the end of that holiday. And it comes after, once again, one of, if not the most important holiday, depends on the person you talk to, Rosh Hashanah, which is the start of the Jewish New Year. So you kind of start the year, and then I believe it's 10 days later, you practice Yom Kippur. So you kind of start preparing for the things that you're going to ask for forgiveness to in those 10 days. And then Yom Kippur is the day that you let it all out. And you ask that God inscribes you in the book of life.
Yeah, and I would say, regardless of anyone's worldview, like you were saying, religious or not, I would highly, highly encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to attend one of your friends' faith-based observances like we're talking about here. Because, well, first of all, you can have these wonderful treats and cookies and different cultural foods, right, that are so fun. But also just to experience it. Like, what are the similarities and differences? One thing I love, and I know people who would say that they are of no religion, but they are working on themselves as a human, right, as a human to other humans, would say that withdrawing from this material world is part of their practice. Like, it's hard, it's loud, it's like a river, it's like flowing, right? How do we step out of it? So I don't know, Umi or Maddie, do you have any additional thoughts about this process you've gone through, where you've gone to college and you've had some space to kind of identify what your faith and what your faith practices mean for you, separate from your family?
Yeah, I think for me, something interesting about Lent is that you personally choose what you want to give up. So it's different for everybody. And so when I was at home in high school is when I started to kind of think about it and reflect on what I wanted to give up. It was usually something based off of my parents, because if they were giving up something in their diet, that would reflect on me, because we would have dinner together as a family, so it just kind of depended. But then as I got to Stetson, it was more about me, reflecting on what was going to be a challenge, or what I could actually do if I wanted to give up sweets, or if I wanted to give up eating after 7 p.m. It wasn't reflective of what my parents were doing or my brother was doing. And so I think coming to college, for me, I've been able to, sit down, and social media for me is a struggle, especially like having friends and having family in different parts of Florida, different parts of the country that, as you know, if you've spent on social media, it's fun to see what people are doing. And so it's been hard to step back and let myself reflect and notice when my natural instinct is to go click on Instagram and have to, pause and reflect on why I'm doing what I'm doing. But yeah, for sure, it's a big switch of having myself reflect on me instead of, choosing on based off of what other people around me are doing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I, as part of my fast, even though it doesn't say you have to, thought, it'd probably be good for me spiritually to be on social media a little less. I love social media as well. I have family everywhere. But I thought I should probably do that. I was at a stoplight not a week ago, y'all. When I tell you seriously, I realized I was on Facebook and I didn't remember getting on it. Like, I just had picked up the phone and clicked on it at a stoplight. And I was like, ooh, that is not good. Like, I had this moment where I don't even know how I got there. Such a habit. So then I've started in my car, plugging in my phone, putting it a slightly different place, and turning on some kind of spiritual or classical kind of music or whatever, and it's a whole different vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
The same thing, like, I stopped having my phone next to my bed at night, because if it's there, I'll be like, oh, I've been wanting to buy that on Amazon. I'll just click, or I've been wondering about something you shared about your faith. I want to know this story about Esther, and then I click on it, and, So I know myself well enough to know that I physically can't have it near me. Like, I cannot touch it. And I loved recently, the monks who walked across the United States, they were saying that if they could give a tip to people, it would be, when you wake up in the morning, don't touch your phone. Make your bed with your hands. Do something like physical, like in touch with the earth. Set for the day, I'm going to live today in peace. Like these little things that we could do for our habits. So, Umi, what are you learning about yourself this season? Like, you're here in the Ramadan season. What have you been learning about yourself this season?
Honestly, I feel just going back to what you had said about kind of using my faith as something I haven't inherited and more something that I've embedded into my own life. I feel like growing up, Islam for me was very difficult in the way that I didn't have, it's not that I didn't have the resources, it's not that I didn't have the faith, it's more like I don't understand it the way that I do understand it now. And now when I look at it, I think of Islam as a way of life. And the reason why I say this is because from when you're sick to when I have a chemistry exam, or when I'm feeling like really anxious, or when I'm feeling really sad, the Quran and Islamic teachings have almost everything you need for it. We call it dua, but then it's a type of supplication that you can read, or there are verses you can read where God gives you a way to come out of this struggle. And always for me, I have believed that praying is not supposed to make you feel like, hey, things are going to be so much more easier. Praying is going to allow things to go the way they're going, but give you strength to get through them. That's how I think of it. And honestly speaking, I feel like the reason to why I've connected so much to Islam is because of practices like zakah and sadaqah, which is all about like charity and giving. And I feel like Islam really connects to my value of empathy, because it shows me a way that I can care for other people and be connected to other people no matter who they are or where they are in their lives. And so I genuinely feel like for me, Islam has given me that path.
Yeah, you mentioned already, Jonah, this like connection that that your faith tells you that everyone is of God. And I know that there's also Jewish traditions and Christian traditions that teach this connection of service. Yeah. What does that service look like for you at this stage in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of just gives me a purpose. Like having that you mean service as in like,
yeah, being of service to others. Like I know that you you teach at a Jewish school.
Oh, yeah, okay.
What are your physical acts that are a representation of your faith? Okay.
I'm a Hebrew school teacher at a synagogue in Maitland, and I love it. I've been going there since I moved here when I was in third grade, and I was probably one of the most rowdy kids that they've had at the religious school, and now I'm a teacher teaching with other teachers that.
And how do you manage the rowdy kids, Jonah?
Exactly, and they all and I think I do a good job with that. I think as a person minoring in education, as a backup, being a teacher, I think that I have a different way of connecting with the students, because I can see myself in 90% of the students that don't want to be at school. And look, I did not want to go to Hebrew school when I was a kid, and I'm sure all of the kids do not. And hearing from some of the kids like, your class is the only reason I come to Hebrew school, just gives me that purpose. As much as what I'm teaching may not be the traditional way of teaching, my students are learning the prayers well, because the way that I'm teaching it is more towards their maturity, because I know how they'd like to learn, and doing that through cahoots or videos or me making jokes and letting them kind of walk around in class and do what they need to do as long as they're not disrupting other classes. I pick the battles. And by me being a religious school teacher, it kind of gives me that purpose of spreading Judaism. As much as these students are already Jews, it gives me that purpose to kind of enhance their Judaism, if that makes sense.
I love that. And knowing all of you in some way, I know that service is a daily part of your life. And I especially love this, which you're involved in as well, connecting with people slightly younger than you. My son also is a children's class teacher, and some of the children are wild. And I'm like, you know what? Turnaround is fair play, bro, because I remember those days, where that was the case. So Let's talk a little bit about misconceptions and curiosity, whether it's fasting or Lent or whatever, or your religion in general. What do you think are some of the misconceptions that people have about fasting? So for example, I'll share, I fast for 19 days from sunrise to sunset. We're 9 days in. When I share that with people, there's a couple things that they mention. One is like, oh my God, I could never do that. Like, you're going to die. That's unhealthy. I don't think, you know. Another is that people are very, which is very sweet, concerned about eating near me or offering me food and then forgetting that I'm fasting, which to your point, Umi, about the reason I fast doesn't bother me at all, actually. Like, this is a choice for my own spiritual development. I had a youth tell me the other day that they've switched the way they see fasting from something they have to do to something they get to do. And I realized that's it for me as well. It's something I get to do. So it doesn't bother me, you know, but there are definitely misconceptions about our practices. Do you have others that you would like to debunk?
I feel like a very stereotypical as well as very common question I'm going to get is not even water when I tell you about my fasting. And I genuinely feel like one thing that I wish more people would know is that fasting is just like the physical experience of the whole month and the observances we have. And it's more about like the spiritual part of it. Like fasting without prayer, it doesn't feel right to me. Fasting without maybe reading a verse from my holy book, it doesn't feel right to me. So I feel like there's more of a spiritual essence to fasting than just not having food or water, you know? So that's a misconception that I would have put out there to clear out.
Absolutely. Anything with your religion in general or this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, something that kind of switched a little bit too was that when I was in high school or growing up at home, it wasn't something that you shared about with other people. Like, you didn't like, oh, I'm giving up alcohol, or it wasn't something that you like said. But the more that I've come to Stetson and I kind of chose to do it on my own, it's been something that I've actually chosen to do in community. You know, we talk about what we're giving up and we talk about the difficulties of it and how we've chosen to get into scripture and pray together, because then it feels more, I think it feels easier. You know, you're doing it with other people. And now more than ever, you know, everybody across different traditions is participating in their own way. And I think that being able to talk about it instead of it being something that is supposed to be done on your own and by yourself in seclusion is a big one for Christianity.
I love this so much. And you and I have talked a little bit about this. What do you think are some of the fears in general, and then maybe some of the concerns right now with sharing openly about your Christianity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot. I think that right now, politically, Christianity is really heavy, and it's hard. And I've, you know, talked about this a lot. For me as a student, it's been really hard to say that I'm a Christian, just because of a lot of things going on, or stereotypes that have been put on me because of my faith, or what I agree with and what I don't agree with. And so I think that learning to have those hard conversations and learning to, ask follow-up questions has been a really big thing for me that's helped like the conversation keep going, especially with professors or classmates that have, you know, assumed things or said something, for me to respond and just be like, hey, why did you say that? Or why do you have that, you know, assumption in your head already, and how can I like clear that up for you, or how can I tell you about my position of my faith so we can, you know, move past that, or maybe somebody can grow a little bit on their perception of Christianity as a whole. So that's been a big one for sure.
Yeah, it was interesting when I talked to David Kay, who's the head of the Interfaith Central Florida group. He said, you know, sometimes interdenominational argument is more than cross-denominational argument. Like, I think we hear a lot about cross-denominational argument, but it's very interesting that right now, like if there's a comment or something that happens, I notice in the comments, Bible scripture fights. Like, but so this chapter says this and this chapter says that. And I'm like, whoa, this is like not really, I've even had people write on there, like, you're doing Christianity wrong, right? Like there's so much, and this is probably true, you know, of other faiths as well, but faith being used in ways that cause dissent has historically been something, you know, I mean, for both or either of you, I'm sure when you mention your faith that people have an idea of what that means to them. might be positive, might be negative. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough because personally, we're all people, and I think that's so powerful and gets passed by so many people that it's tough to kind of work past the religion side of things. Like, even though we're so small, like I mentioned before, Judaism has an automatic connection to Israel, which, yes, I mean, we truly believe that that's a place where we can be safe, and anyone should be able to be safe there, and that's it. And there's so many different versions of those thoughts that, yeah, there are some people that may necessarily cause some problems and may not be the most comfortable people to live in a country with of our faith. Like, it's of all faiths.
Sure.
Like, it only takes a few people to kind of put in someone else's mind that the entire group of people is problematic. Like, yeah, there's bad people in the world, and that's just something that people have to live with. And just because there's some people that are bad doesn't mean that all, like, if two guys go rob a store, that doesn't automatically mean that every guy in the world is a robber. It's difficult to kind of look past that for everyone. I think that the news plays such a hard role in causing those, I don't even know if the word is stereotypes, but causing those misconceptions about people just because of the need for money in the media agency and the need for finding the most insane story and making it the most insane that it can be. Well, it's probably like not even 100% true. And it's difficult for most people to kind of look past that. And that's my hope for as I grow up is that people start seeing people as people again, and the news starts commenting on things that need to be commented on, not things that tear other groups down, and that's that.
Mm-hmm. I think I would definitely agree with that. I feel like there's so many like stereotypes assigned to a certain group. And I think with that, I think I would bring in the golden rule, because a lot of the times at our core, we're all human. And another thing you were talking about before this was about your kosher diet. Yeah. And I come to see that I eat halal food as part of my practice in Islam. And sometimes, thank God, with the growing globalization that we have in America, there's a lot of halal food restaurants and different culture foods around. But sometimes I'll go to like a big food chain, or I'll go to just a normal restaurant, and I'm going to ask for a kosher meal, or if they don't have a halal. And so I kind of just see that unity within our differences.
Yeah.
You know?
And it also, to me as well, is to Christianity. I mean, we have the same book, basically. I mean, Christianity is I mean, I won't speak but from what I know, it's the Old Testament plus the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, from what I've done research on. But it's all pretty much very similar practices in a lot of religions. And the golden rule is so important because every religion has their own wording of the golden rule. And it's most religions' core thing is treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's just something that seems to pass everyone's minds nowadays, and it's difficult.
I think that's something that, a lot of people don't realize how similar and rooted, we are with the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament. And there's just so many things that unite us that I think people, because of how they grew up or because of, their own personal convictions, are just turned off. Whereas, conversations and actually realizing those similarities, I think also leads people to actually live the golden rule, and seeing how similar we are, even though in the forefront we seem so different.
Yeah. No, I love this conversation because recently we were shown some data that actually the kind of industry of contentment, like trying to cause arguments, is like potentially a $3 trillion or more industry. That politics, social media, et cetera, make money off of there being,
conflict.
Yeah. And so then and we know that usually extremist behavior from any group is a very, very small percentage. They just happen to be very loud. I think it's important to address that because they have power on people who have traditionally been marginalized. So for example, in talking to the Holocaust Center, often they get horrible things posted on their Facebook page, or the Islamic Center, same thing. I mean, really to the level of like wishing harm on other people. And so we have to recognize that. We have to recognize that it has an impact. Also, at the same time, true things can be true. We have to recognize that most people actually believe much more what we're talking about in my experience, which is there's probably more similar than different. And maybe I just don't know enough diverse people in my life to make that decision. So back to kind of like, we'll wrap it up with thinking about this time of the year. This time of the year, it's spring. Also, I mean, it depends on where you are in the world. Here, it already feels like summer, but it's spring. Things are blossoming for much of the world. Nowruz, the New Year, the Persian New Year, is coming up in a few weeks, and a lot of people celebrate that New Year. So, from either our fasting or this time of year, our traditions, what are we learning? What do we wish for in the world? I loved you sharing your hope.
I genuinely think that I'd go back to something that I recently said about hunger. And as I said before, hunger really reorients us to our humanity because we're able to kind of just put ourselves in the shoes of people who don't live, they live with hunger, but not by choice. Another thing that I would say is that in our daily lives, we kind of just like, at least for me, I'm going to go to like school, I'm going to wake up, go to school, I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to like probably break my fast, pray Maghrib, and then do chores, and then do homework and go to sleep, and then repeat that cycle all over again. And kind of just feels like a rat race at this point. And to me, I feel like Ramadan has come when my heart has been most heavy because it stands like a counterculture to like just everything that's going on around the world. Like now I'm able to like finish my homework and then go to the mosque and have that time for myself and just like reflect and become a better person. I'm gonna have time to do more charity at this point. So I think beautifully Ramadan has integrated itself into this year. So,
yeah, I think something for me that not being on social media has allowed me to do the research without seeing the things taken out of context, except in certain instances, where it's in whatever, but in different instances. But I think that for me, and what I'm hoping for, is that people would choose, Christians right now specifically, would choose to do the research and find out what you believe with everything that's going on right now. Find the facts, look up your history, and know what you believe instead of siding with certain sides because it's the quote-unquote right thing to do. And I think that giving something up or having to, reflect on that and why we're doing what we're doing. You have the time. You have the time to reflect and sit on what's happening right now in the world and how, you can educate yourself. And that's been my biggest thing is, okay, let's open my scripture and see what it says. Or, let's look up the facts of, the history of the U.S., whatever it is that you want to find the answers to, you have the time right now because you're having to reflect on your own humanity and where you're struggling and what you've given up.
Yeah, I do find it quite amazing how our observances, they kind of just give us this built-in time for ourselves, a time to just reconnect with the world as well as our faith. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think I'll also comment on it. I think similar to what I said before, if the world was able to kind of see people as people instead of the color of their skin, the religion that they are, the gender that they are, and just see them as a human being, I mean, the world would be completely different. And I think, yes, sides are necessary in a lot of situations, but even if like we could go to a place where there are no sides and people are just people, it's very unrealistic, but definitely possible with a lot of effort. But I think, not to get super political, but if you look back at 4 or 5 terms ago, especially in the US, I mean, the candidates shook each other's hand and said, you're a great person, and we may disagree on different things, but now it's like, it's the other person sucks. The other person has the wrong views. And it's the whole campaign has become, I'm not the other guy. And that's just, it's not healthy for the world. And I think that that needs to change. And I hope that in my lifetime that's something that I can do a little bit to help. But
yeah, one thing that's challenging for me sometimes to remember is my Baha'i faith teaches me that this time of peace, when we're all together as one humanity, is not only possible, that it's inevitable.
Yeah.
That this is our challenge on this life, is to figure this out. We have lots of complex things to work on. And when you think about yourself as a baby inside the utero, you're like developing physical qualities to be able to live in the world. And that this world allows us the ability to build spiritual qualities, to connect with each other, to create humanity within each other for whatever's next. And I always hold that in my heart, because similar to Umi, this year the fast came for me at a very interesting time. There's so much sorrow in my heart about what's happening all over the world, about friends of mine who, regardless of their nationality, are assumed to be people who have immigrated to this country and are being treated in different ways. So even in my own life, much less turn on the news and see people all over the world who are suffering, and children who are literally being killed while we decide, what we want as humanity. That doesn't seem like the golden rule to me. Like, I've always had this lifelong question that if all these faiths believe in the golden rule, how are we going to figure out how to live it? Like, that's what I think my challenge is individually, and what maybe our challenge is collectively. What I hope for the world has been clarified listening to some of you talk, especially when Umi and I talk about, because we're fasting at the same time this year, is that this time that's very purposeful for both of our religions, many of our religions, where we pause, can be something that everyone can take a small piece from. Spend more time in your community with others. Spend more time sharing a meal. Spend more time in prayer or meditation or silence with yourself. Spend a little bit more of your time purposely, that you chose it, not that it happened to you, but like you happened to it. So that's what I hope, is that this time where we're all focusing on our own spirituality can be released, and other people can find that in whatever ways feels natural to them. Because it's not given in our society. It's something we have to like purposely put in the ground. And there are little ways we can all do it every day. Umi created a little interfaith and connection basket for our office place, and you can go there and pull out little things, or she even has little prayers and quotes from different traditions and thoughts about in one that's like, I'm feeling anxious, and you pull one out, or one, I'm feeling,
that's amazing.
And I actually have used it multiple times, and she doesn't know this, but the other day in the office I called one of my interns, and I was really stressing out about a lot of things that we were working on, and she said, hold on a second, and I was like, I'm venting about how I'm stressed. And then she got back on the phone and she said, I pulled you a little quote about anxiety from the basket in the kitchen, and I wanted to read it. And I was like, Umi, having impact on the universe without even knowing it. So in wrapping up, I'll say I'm so grateful, because the other thing that this podcast reminds me is about the depth and the power of youth. I think people might be shocked about this conversation. And if you are, I would challenge you to spend more time with youth, because they're thinking about things and they're very aware of the negative impacts of our society and striving to live powerful lives in ways that I think people underestimate. So yeah. So from the Phoenix generation, thank you for being our first Faces of Faith trial. I'm wishing you all a beautiful spring season. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.